I learned about this in the most unusual way. It happened at the start of our annual men's fishing weekend. The guys, Scott, Stan, Roger, and I, go to the lake for a 3-day fishing trip, and our wives have a girls' weekend away. We have known each other for many years, and Roger and Mary are our closest friends. Stan Fortunato is Roger's nephew and several years younger than us, but we have accepted him into our circle of friends. Over time, he became one of my best employees. When Laura and I got married, we were still high school graduates, but I was goal-oriented and hard-working. Shortly after graduating from high school, I started a small pool service business, and within 2 years, it had grown to serve over 100 homes with 4 employees. The business continued to thrive, and 20 years later, I serve over 1,500 homes with a team of 30 dedicated employees, including the invaluable Stan, who has proven to be a wonderful asset to the company. Despite having no college education or work experience, Stan's enthusiasm, hard work ethic, and excellent team relationships made him an exceptional leader for our Orlando location. Recognizing his outstanding contributions, I promoted him, offering him a significant salary increase and the opportunity to become a company owner in the future. Our professional relationship developed into a true friendship, and we enjoyed working together. Over the years, I expanded the company's business from Tampa to Orlando, making it the leading pool service company in Central Florida. Since the vast majority of homes have swimming pools that require constant care and maintenance, our services are in great demand. Revenues and profits increased sharply, strengthening the company's position in the market. As the business grew, the importance of financial management became apparent. I relied on Howard, a trusted and experienced family member who was a retired tax accountant and had a wealth of financial knowledge. On his advice, I used all my home equity to expand my business when mortgage rates were extremely low. My confidence in Howard is a testament to his experience and dedication. He and his attorney wife played a significant role in our success by providing invaluable advice and guidance that proved instrumental in helping the company thrive. Howard's wife, Beth, a corporate lawyer, suggested putting the company into a trust to protect the assets from liabilities and possible future lawsuits. I followed her advice and became my sole confidant. Ah yes, the joys of married life and the pursuit of a dream home. My wife Laura and her friends absolutely love our new home. Picture this: a chic, upscale neighborhood with a huge pool, a spacious patio with a charming Hawaiian bar, and a grilling area that would make any barbecue lover's mouth water. Let's not forget about the luxurious amenities that Laura insisted on. She knows how to get her way, and I can never refuse her persuasive charm. You see, these houses in our posh neighborhood are going up in price faster than a shooting star. So, naturally, I succumbed to Laura's every whim, knowing full well that when the time came to sell, we would be the winner. Love has the ability to force us to do things that we would not even think about, but it's all for the good, isn't it? Well, the day has come. Laura and her friends arrived at our luxurious abode for a weekend of complete solitude. When they arrived, I received strict instructions not to interfere with their pranks. Their task is to have a blast without us husbands. And I happily complied. I was more than ready to escape the clutches of girl talk and weekend gossip. With fishing rods in hand and a heart full of freedom, I rushed there faster than a pack of puppies. The fishing trip felt like heaven after spending weeks working hard to manage my growing company. The thought of catching more fish and drinking something cold with the guys was pure heaven. Leaving the ladies alone with their wine and secrets, I couldn't help but think how lucky I was to have Laura and her gang of schemers in my life. Sure, they drive us husbands crazy sometimes, but deep down, we know they are the spice that spices up our ordinary days. I couldn't help but smile as I drove to Roger's house, knowing the weekend adventure was just beginning. We carefully planned our trip to the lake, intending to leave at 6 o'clock in the evening and reach our destination by 9 o'clock. The 3-day outing promised to be exciting, filled with fishing and friendly communication. As I was getting ready to get into the car, I suddenly realized that I had forgotten my special bait, which I had been working hard on in the workshop. For me, fishing is not just a hobby, but a passion. I take pride in creating my lures and tackle with the belief that the right tackle can be the key to a successful catch. This lure I've been working on for the past week has a special meaning to me. It's a labor of love, a custom-made piece designed to attract the biggest fish and give me pleasure on the water. Knowing how important it is to have the perfect bait, I couldn't imagine going on a trip without it. So I informed my fishing buddies that I needed to pick up my bait before we set off on our trip. They chuckled good-naturedly, naturally understanding my dedication to the sport. At 5 in the evening, I jumped in the car, drove the 7 minutes home, parked behind all the women's cars, walked to the side door, and quietly went down to the workshop, not wanting to disturb the girls or get reprimanded for coming home early. Trying not to make any noise, I walked up to the bench and noticed that I could hear women talking. I remember I laughed, realizing that they were already drunk, as they were giggling and having fun. They were sitting in the shade next to the Hawaiian hut on the side of my house. The workbench was right under the window and close enough to hear their conversation. I'm not a big eavesdropper and I don't really care about their conversation, but when I heard my wife talking about me in bed, my attention perked up. I don't know why, but I thought I'd record this part of the conversation and tease her when I got back. So I turned on the voice recorder app on my iPhone. The next few minutes ruined my fishing and turned my world upside down. Apparently, I found myself in the midst of hot gossip. The ladies certainly didn't hold back, and I couldn't help but laugh at their frankness. They seemed to be discussing not-so-private details about their personal lives, and things were getting very spicy. Laura, laughing mischievously, did not hesitate to talk about her relationship with her husband, with me. I heard her telling the girls how great I was with my tongue and how I had never screwed up after all these years. I couldn't help but think, well, there you go, Laura, boasting about my hubby. She continued, but what they say is true. After many years of marriage, everything may not be as stormy as before, but hey, it happens to the best of us. But then, as if out of nowhere, one of the girls asked the million-dollar question. So that's why you were doing this with Stan? I perked up my ears, leaning in to see how Laura would react to this stunning news. The girls were in detective mode, trying to piece together the puzzle of Laura's recent antics. Judging by Laura's frankness, I felt that the conversation was about to take an interesting turn. While waiting for Laura's answer, tension and intrigue hung in the air. Crap! My heart skipped a beat, and I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Did I hear correctly? Did Laura just say that she had something with Stan? Our Stan? Panic and disbelief washed over me like a tidal wave, and I leaned even closer, desperately trying to catch every word. My mind raced, trying to process this shocking revelation. Stan, who I trusted and considered a friend, was involved in something with my wife. It felt like the ground was crumbling under my feet, and I struggled to keep my emotions under control. Every word they uttered was like a dagger to my heart. The giggles and laughter that once brought joy now sounded like a cruel symphony of betrayal. My hands were shaking as I clutched the phone, my heart was pounding wildly in my chest, and tears were threatening to flow from my eyes. As I continued to eavesdrop on this heartbreaking conversation, I felt like a helpless bystander in my own life. The shock and pain were too strong, and I desperately wished that I could rewind time and erase these words from my life. At that moment, the truth hit me like a brick. The trust I had placed in Laura and Stan shattered into a million pieces. I felt lost, betrayed, and completely broken. The pain was unbearable, and I was both lost and devastated. After listening to the conversation, I realized that my life would never be the same. The innocence and happiness that filled our home will now be replaced by heartache and despair. No, Bob and I have a good sex life, and in this regard he has always suited me. I love him and would never deliberately start a relationship with Stan. It just happened that way. Come on, Laura, you cheated on Bob. You can't be that happy with your marriage. No, you don't understand. My love for Bob is everything. He is not just my man, he is my home, my peace, my heart, and my safe place. And yes, it satisfies me. I love him very much. That stupid thing with Stan was just a big mistake. But you said that Stan is a wonderful lover. So we assume that you had sex with him. We don't understand this. Tell the whole story. Girls, everything I tell you should stay here. The guys will kill Stan and my husband will throw me out on the street if he finds out. I will never hurt him like that. He's so sweet, but he'll never understand. Do you promise that this will remain only between us girls? I didn't hear anything, but I assumed they were all nodding their heads in agreement. Okay, don't try to repeat any of this, but after Susan left Stan last month, he was in turmoil. In complete shock, he was going to propose to her. The day I saw him in the restaurant, we sat down together, and he opened up to me and told me the whole story. Girls, he was crying. This big, strong man was crying, and my heart sank. I felt so sorry for him, and I sat with him until he calmed down. He was so depressed and upset that I felt an almost maternal need to take care of him. Yeah, you're old enough to be his mother. Give us a break, Laura. You had a sexual need to take care of him, not a maternal one. Well, as it turns out, you're right, but sex didn't cross my mind at the time. Anyway, he walked me to the car and thanked me for being a good friend and allowing him to express his feelings. I just smiled and kissed him friendly. That's when the spark started. Before I could move away from him, he pulled me towards him and gave me the sexiest kiss I can remember. It had been many years since Bob had kissed me like that, and that kiss had turned my knees to jelly. Hearing her words, I felt severe pain and heaviness in my chest. I trembled, but I didn't know whether it was out of anger or fear of what she would say next. After we broke the kiss, he, without saying a word, took my hand and led me to his truck, parked a few rows down under a shady tree. Don't ask me why I let him do this. I was spellbound. So we got in the back of his car and spent the next few minutes kissing like high school sweethearts, and then he said that he always found me very sexy and fantasized about being with me. I must admit that I was stunned and flushed by his compliments, but I can't explain what I did next. Frankly, at that time, I didn't think at all about Bob or our family. As if in a trance, I unfastened his belt and pulled down his pants. I can't explain it, but I suddenly wanted to taste it. He was so grateful and said he needed it after what he had been through. Hearing this, my heart felt like it was torn in two. I cannot convey the pain that these words caused, penetrating into every cell of my body. I felt myself trembling and shaking as a sense of loss washed over me. Roger's wife, Mary, spoke next. Wow, how hot. We had no idea you had it in you. Me too. I had never thought about doing something like this before, but it just happened. Then Scott's wife, Emily, added, I think all of us girls dream about this, but it never happens. Well done. I envy you so much. Tell me what happened next. I could tell from Laura's voice that she knew she had done wrong and felt a deep sense of regret for crossing a line she shouldn't have crossed. Well, when I came to my senses and realized what I had done, I was suddenly overcome by a feeling of guilt. I knew what I did was wrong and that Bob would never understand, so I had to make sure it didn't happen again. I told Stan it was a one-time thing and we could never do anything like that again. Then I told him that Bob was his friend and he would feel betrayed by both of us if he knew about it. Stan agreed. He said it was just a moment of passion and that it would forever remain our secret. As I stood there, my heart racked with shock and pain, Laura's confession still echoing in my head, Mary's words struck the final blow to any remaining hope. They destroyed the last remnants of my illusions, and I felt completely lost and empty. Well, how did you end up in bed with Stan and turned your husband into a horny one? Hearing this question turned me into a broken person, humiliated and lost. I wanted to strangle both Stan and my cheating wife with my bare hands. Laura hesitated before recounting how Stan had approached her, seeking comfort in a moment of despair. The momentary pleasure was overshadowed by the awareness of betrayal and the depth of the pain she had caused. When she spoke, her words were tinged with sadness as she revealed the intimate details she shared with Stan. She said in a gloomy voice, "No, please don't think like that. I just made another stupid mistake. I actually screwed up and should have been smarter. Stan called me to invite me to lunch, but I declined, saying that we really shouldn't see each other alone. He said that he was depressed and needed to talk to someone, and that he felt like I was the only one who understood what he was going through. Stan said he would cook dinner for us if I came to his house for at least an hour. Then I made another colossal mistake by going to his house alone. We sat and talked, eating salads and washing them down with another glass of wine. After an hour of small talk, he said how touched he was by our last meeting. He stood next to me, about to take our dishes to the sink, and kissed me again. This time it was one of those romantic kisses that girls dream of. Long story short, we ended up in his bed for the whole day. It wasn't romantic at all, just rough sex. I knew it was wrong, but that's how it happened. And to be honest, it was the best sex I've had in years. He hasn't had sex for a long time, and he is a passionate lover. It was an amazing few hours of hot sex, but we both knew it wouldn't happen again. After I showered and got dressed, I said that this would never happen again, and that he should not call me. She said that he was a wonderful man, and that he should find a woman his age that he could love, and that I would not jeopardize my marriage. We both agreed, and that was the last time. So you were never with him again? Just those 2 times? Anger bubbled through my veins, and I clenched my fist tightly, trying to contain the storm of emotions raging within me. The revelation about Laura's one-time meeting with Stan was like a blow to the heart, and the pain intensified with every word she said. My world was falling apart, and the life I knew was over. I was filled with rage, but I also felt a desperate desire to salvage what was left of our relationship. I didn't want to lose her, but I couldn't bear the weight of betrayal. My mind was racing, battling conflicting emotions. Resentment and anger mixed with feelings of helplessness, and I felt lost and vulnerable. How could she do this? How could she betray the trust between us like that? Just as I was looking for a glimmer of hope, Laura's next comment hit me like a brick. It was like she was pouring salt into an already open wound. Her words tore my heart, deepening my anger and disbelief. I know it was wrong, but, as I said, it just happened. At this moment, my anger reached its climax. How can she dare to treat her actions so lightly, as if they were some kind of uncontrollable impulses? My anger flared up more and more when I heard my wife belittle her infidelities. I felt a sense of resentment, a sense of betrayal that went beyond the physical act. For the sake of a moment's pleasure, she voluntarily put our marriage at risk. The room seemed to close in around me, and I tried to find a way to cope with my anger. I wanted to scream, to break free, but I understood that this would not solve anything. The pain was all-consuming, and I felt a weight pressing on my chest. At that moment, I realized that I couldn't figure it all out right away. Then, when she spoke again, I listened carefully to find some hope for our future together. When she spoke, her voice trembled with emotion. Laura admitted that, despite feeling guilty, she could not help but remember the intense passion she shared with Stan. She said that these memories became a secret refuge for her, which she sought when making love to me. No, never again. All I have now are wonderful memories. I hate to admit it, but I use them when Bob makes love to me. I know it's wrong, but I can't get it out of my head. Now these memories are all I have left. It was a heartbreaking confession. There was a sense of sadness in Laura's words, as she tried to accept that these memories of Stan would always be a part of her, no matter how much she wanted to erase them. Emily was silent, but after Laura's confession, she spoke. "Laura, I'm so jealous. I love Scott too, but I would love to try sex like you had with Stan. I don't want to say anything, but Scott is kind of small. I love it very much, but I would kill to try something different just once." I heard Mary let out a soft moan, as if the story had aroused her. Holy shit! And poor Bob doesn't know anything? Has no idea about Stan or that you fantasize about him during sex? God, this is so obscene, Laura. But you better get your head in order and forget about Stan. Bob is not a stupid person, and you can slip up and hurt him. Don't worry about Bob. I'll make sure he's taken care of. And believe me, he will never know about this. And I will never do this again, I swear. It was a mistake, and it's hard to live with that guilt. Honestly, along with the wine, What helps me is that I finally told someone the whole story. Now my future was in danger as the girls giggled and enjoyed their girl talk about me. I'm the sucker who bought the big house, paid the bills, and let my wife enjoy the luxury life without working. Spa, country club, shopping, new big house with a swimming pool for fun and a housekeeper. And all this at my expense. A mug, better known as an ignorant husband. I couldn't believe what I just heard. The shock of Laura's confession plunged me into a state of disbelief, and tears streamed down my face, revealing the depth of my pain. Time seemed to fly by in a blur as I listened to the conversation, and I could not tear myself away from the painful truth. I understood that I had to leave, distance myself from the situation, at least for a while. With a heavy heart, I took my fishing bait and the bottle of Amontillado sherry I had bought for the boys and headed back to Roger's house. The guys are waiting for my return, despite the turmoil raging inside me. The tears continued to flow as I drove, my head a whirlwind of confusion and resentment. I needed time to think it all over, to come to terms with the betrayal I had just discovered. I was not ready to meet Laura and tell her what I had learned. The pain is too strong, too overwhelming. I wanted to stick to my original plan, get away for the weekend and find solace in a place where I could be alone with my thoughts. But fate seemed to show a cruel sense of humor when I realized that I would be spending these days with Stan, the one involved in the heartbreaking affair. The prospect of being near him only added to my suffering. I didn't know what to expect, and the uncertainty weighed me down. Will I be able to contain my emotions? Will I be able to meet him face to face without suffocating him and without revealing the devastation I felt inside? As I drove back to Roger's house, the tears kept flowing and I felt a deep sense of loss and pain. The upcoming weekend hung over me like a dark cloud, and I didn't know how to deal with it. All I knew was that I needed time to heal, to find a way to reconcile my broken heart. At that moment, I felt completely alone, feeling betrayed by someone I loved and trusted. The sadness in my heart was overwhelming, and I prayed that I would someday find a way to mend the pieces of my broken soul. When I arrived, Roger was standing outside loading his Escalade. As I approached, he noticed that something was wrong and that my eyes were glazed over. I knew I wasn't ready to say anything, but when he asked what was wrong, I came up with a good answer. "Bob, what happened? You look terrible. What's the matter?" "Sorry, Roger, I'm having a migraine and just need to switch off for a while." "You are sure? Dude, you look bad." "Yes, I'm used to dealing with it. Just let me sit in front, I'll close my eyes, and I'm sure I'll be fine. Besides, there's no way I'm going to miss our annual trip. I need to unwind." "Sure, no problem. Why don't you go inside and relax while we finish getting ready? We'll leave in about 30 minutes. When we are ready, I will come for you." Sure enough, 30 minutes later, I was in the front seat, and my buddy Roger was taking care of me. He took his wife's blindfold and a pair of his noise-canceling headphones and handed them to me as I sat in the passenger seat with Stan and Scott in the back. Together with the blindfold, the headphones plunged me into darkness. My senses were now limited to smell, touch, and taste, which allowed me to process this unexpected situation. The guys understood my reticence and offered to help if I needed anything. I couldn't look at Stan. I just kept my eyes closed and thanked them for their understanding. For the next 3 hours, still in that dark place, I could sit quietly and contemplate the disaster I had just witnessed. I thought back through our years together, how I idolized Laura and felt blessed when she gave me Michael and Katie, our wonderful children. She said that it was just one time, that she felt guilty and would never do it again. I wanted to find a way to forgive her and forget about it, but the killer for me was her last words about how she thinks about Stan when I make love to her. As a red-blooded man, I can't imagine any guy could survive that. No. Unfortunately, I believe this confession ended our marriage. I thought about how all the good times we had together as a family might end. Tears welled up in my eyes and I wiped them away before they became noticeable. For the first time that I can remember, I felt difficult and confused. I have no answers, No idea what to do, and I must have fallen asleep because the last thing I remember is Roger shaking my shoulder, waking me up. "Dude, are you okay? How are you feeling?" he said, already near the fishing hut. I was unusually quiet for the next 2 days and used my migraine as an excuse. The guys left me alone as I was trying not to ruin Scott and Roger's trip. I continued to struggle with my feelings, looking through my life, both past and future. It was difficult, but I knew I would survive. 2 days later, still doubtful, I found myself on the path leading to the lake, alone with Stan. Roger and Scott were going to meet us at the boat dock. I followed Stan through the forest. As I followed him along the path, I heard Laura's words echoing in my head, and suddenly I was overcome with rage. On the side of the path, I noticed a large fallen branch, about the size of a baseball bat. Without thinking, I picked it up, felt the weight of the branch in my hands, looked at Stan, who was standing 20 steps in front of me, and suddenly rushed forward, lifted the heavy branch and brought it down on Stan's right shoulder. He wanted to go for the head, but at the last second, he changed direction and crushed his collarbone, causing Stan searing pain as he fell to the ground. Standing above him, I looked down at the man who was having sex with my wife. He held his shoulder and I shouted, "This is for you, sleeping with my wife." Then I kicked him between the legs as hard as I could. I hit him as hard as I could and watched him arch in pain until he lost consciousness. After a few minutes, I came to my senses, carried Stan to a tree, and sat him down while he came to his senses. A few minutes later, he came to his senses. "What the hell? Listen, asshole, I know everything about you and Laura, and right now you're lucky to be still alive." "Man, I'm sorry this happened." My face turned red with rage. "Shut up! You slept with her. Period. Don't talk to me for the rest of the trip and don't say a word about this to Laura. If you tell me, I swear, you will regret it for the rest of your life. I don't know what I'll do with her, but I don't need you to ruin that either. You ruined my 20-year marriage. Don't ruin my revenge. Bob, she loves you. You can't divorce her. It's all my fault and I'm so sorry. Please just blame it on me and not her. Bob, I was hurt by Susan leaving me while Laura was by my side. It just happened and she felt guilty after I pushed her. Dude, you can't divorce her. She loves you. I hit him again. I said, shut up. At that moment, Roger and Scott saw that I was kicking him again, and they ran over and pulled me away. Bob, what are you doing? What's happened? Roger helped stand up, and we returned to the cabin for the next hour. Stan was holding his shoulder and was angry that I attacked him from behind and that the fight was unfair. I looked at him and told him to shut up, and then played the recording so everyone could hear it. When the recording ended, Roger shouted at his nephew, "You're a damn asshole. You betrayed our friend and the man who gave you a job when you were broke and gave you his trust. You had sex with one of our wives and had the audacity to come with us on this trip. And you're still angry that Bob hurt you? You should be grateful we didn't dump your ass in the middle of the lake. We don't want to see or hear about you for the rest of the trip, not a word. You should be grateful to be alive," Roger said. Scott spoke up. "You know, guys, there's another problem with this recording. You heard what my wife and Mary said and how intriguing it was to them. All our wives are delighted with Laura's infidelity and keep it a secret. I don't know about you, but I have a problem with this. And when I get back, Emily and I are going to have a serious conversation." "Yes, you're right, Scott. It was disrespectful to all of us." He turned to Stan, giving him a death glare, and said, "See what you did, idiot? Destroyed one marriage and possibly 2 others. Maybe we should drop you off in the middle of the lake?" Stan just looked at the floor and was silent. He finally realized how badly he had screwed up. Here I spoke. "Guys, I agree that they are all involved, but please give me a few days before you do anything. I'll give you a copy of the recording, but I need to meet with Laura before she finds out that I know everything. Thanks to this idiot, I don't think I can stay with her. Damn, now every time we make love, I'll know she's thinking about him. Knowing this, there is no way I can be with her. I'll probably divorce her. I just need a few days to figure everything out." Roger looked at his nephew. "Stan, you're a piece of shit. You will not speak to Laura or the other wives without our permission. If you warn Laura about what's about to happen to her, we'll make your life hell. Now, if you disappear, none of us will be upset. You're my nephew and family, and that's the only reason I didn't kick your ass and leave you in the woods. You offended our friend and good man. Just because you couldn't keep your girlfriend, you seduced another man's wife? You are a piece of shit, and I'm ashamed to admit that you are my sister's child. Not a word. Do you understand? Stan nodded in understanding. No one spoke to him again the entire trip, and to his credit, he stayed aloof and avoided conflict. All that remained was to decide what to do with Laura. As we drove home, I thought about it all and wondered how Laura would react if the roles were reversed. Here it is. Suddenly I had a plan. Deep down, I love Laura, and I could probably handle one-time sex with Stan, but the thought of her dreaming about it while making love to me is too much to bear. I decided to leave Laura's fate in her own hands. The plan was to talk about the affair, leading her to believe that I was having an affair, and see how she reacted and what she would do. If she forgives one-time sex, then I will do the same for her sake, and everything will work out. No matter how she reacts, that is how I will feel about her and our marriage. The solution to the problem of her infidelity will be in her own hands. When I got home and pulled into my driveway, my stomach was churning and my anger was bubbling to the surface. I was in a gloomy state, but the time had come to meet Laura, and I needed to keep my feelings under control and act normal, which was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. When I entered the house, a warm welcome awaited me. Laura was dressed smartly and looked good. She gave me a big hug and a kiss in greeting, something I would miss if she chose the wrong path. I was still angry, but I still loved this cheater. My blood boiled as I thought about what she had done, but the smell of her perfume and the delicious dinner she had prepared helped calm me down. We had a great dinner, and somehow I remained gracious and listened to her talk about the last few days. It was still relatively early when she took me to the bedroom, telling me she missed me and needed some extra love. She was obviously horny and wanted sex. I smiled to myself, realizing that our future depended on her. Laura wasted no time, and within a minute of us being on the bed, she had pulled my trousers down to my ankles. After a while, she was already lying on the bed, pulling me towards her. And for the first time in our entire relationship, I couldn't. Laura looked up at me in shock. I realized that this hurt her. "Baby, what happened? It's showtime." I put the phone on the nightstand and began to record the sound so that there would be no misunderstandings with my conversation. "Laura, I need to tell you something. There is someone else, and it makes me feel so bad that I can no longer remain silent." Shocked, she looked up at me and asked, "What do you mean, there is someone else?" "I'm really sorry. It only happened a couple of times, but the sex was so great that I just can't get it out of my head." Her Latin temperament flared up just as I predicted. "You're a damn bastard! Have you had sex with someone else and can't stop thinking about it?" "Baby, it was just sex. And I still love you," I said, trying not to say that I was having an affair. "I cannot believe it. What do you mean you can't stop thinking about it?" "Well, to be honest, it was best sex is in my life, and I can't get it out of my head." I said the words carefully, not implying myself, but simply repeating her own words from the recording. She began to cry, clearly stung by the thought of betrayal. Was I cruel and rude? Perhaps, but in reality, I am the victim, not her. I left the floor to her. Suddenly, she shouted in an angry voice, "Fuck you. You can pack your things and get out. I'm not going to stay married to a cheater. You know that my father cheated on my mother, leaving her broken. I won't let you do this to me. Now get out. I will divorce you and make you pay for it. I was the perfect wife, gave birth to you 2 wonderful children, ran the house, cooked you dinner, and treated you with love, and this is how you repay me for it." I almost laughed at her behavior and comments. She won't like it in a few minutes, that's for sure. "Laura, it was just sex, and only those 2 times. Come on, it was only once. Are you sure you want to get a divorce because of this? Listen, only sex? You're kidding? I don't believe you. And how do I know if there were others? I can't trust you, and yes, I want a divorce, and you will pay dearly for it. You do know that our state just passed a new law in favor of the injured party of adultery, right? I will divorce you based on this law and take everything you are worth. Hell, I'll even take your business and keep you as one of the boys at the pool. Wow, I didn't expect you to be so heartless and cruel. As I already said, there was no love there. There was only sex, and only those 2 times. Is this really what you want? Are you sure forgiveness is impossible? Maybe we can go to counseling? I tried to save the marriage, but in fact she herself made the decision to end it and did not even know it. No, it's all over between us. I won't be married to a cheater. Just pack your clothes and leave. Stay with Roger or get a hotel room. But I don't want to see you anymore. You will learn about this from my lawyer. I couldn't help but smile. She didn't even suspect that she had just brought herself to execution. With venom in her voice, she shouted, "Why do you have such a grin on your face?" "Well, honey, you just made my decision easier." "What do you mean, made your decision easier?" she asked. "Let me show you something. Get dressed and come with me." She was still angry and seething, but she followed me into the workshop. I asked her to stand at the same window where I was recording. I told her to stay where she was and not move until I returned. I went outside, synced the Bluetooth speakers with my iPhone, and returned to the workshop. She was still angry, but now looked confused as I stood next to her and pressed play on my phone. My cheating wife became even more confused when she heard herself speak, but continued to listen, and then her expression changed to shock. When she heard the whole conversation, she burst into tears and fell to her knees. The realization of what had happened hit her hard. "Baby, I'm so sorry. How did you hear that?" she asked, continuing to cry. "Well, I don't know why this is important, but I had to go back for something I forgot to take with me. I didn't want to disturb you girls, so I came in through the back door to avoid your little party. That's when I heard you talking about me in bed. I wrote this down because I was going to share with you and tease you when I get back. But when you confessed to your affair with Stan, I stayed and wrote everything down. Darling, you heard me say that it was just a one-time and only sex. You should know that there is nothing between us. I have to forgive myself, I'm very sorry, but you weren't supposed to find out." Among our tears and heartache, Laura's words of repentance made their way through the pain. Her voice trembled with genuine sadness and regret as she asked me for forgiveness, exposing her vulnerability. Her plea for understanding touched me, and I realized that beneath the layers of hurt and anger lay deep love. But he did not give in to her tears and pleas. My voice was cold and distant as I revealed the painful truth to Laura. The resentment was deep, and I could not shake the feeling of betrayal that consumed me. The words that she dreamed about Stan during our intimate moments destroyed the last shards of trust between us. "I heard everything, Laura," I answered, losing the warmth in my voice. "You're right, but you left out the part where you admit that you dream about him when you and I were making love. How can you expect me to just forget about it?" For the first time in our marriage, her tears did not seem to touch me, but the pain of her words sank deep into my heart. The image of her dreaming of another man while I poured my love and soul into our moments together was too much for me to bear. "I can't ignore this, Laura," I continued, my voice filled with bitterness. "And I also can't ignore the fact that you were never going to tell me about it and continued to keep me in the dark. You destroyed something inside me, and I don't know if I can ever trust you again. How can I believe that you really love me if you dream of someone else?" I was filled with anger and felt that I deserved better. The thought of being with someone who couldn't fully commit to me was the final blow. "I can't just pretend like everything is fine," I said, my voice firm. "Dreaming about another man while we are together is a reason for separation for me. I don't know how to love you again, knowing that in the most intimate moments you think about him, and not about me. The pain in my heart was overwhelming, and the thought of repairing our relationship seemed impossible. I couldn't find it in myself to forgive her when she betrayed me in such a deep way." Silence reigned in the room as the weight of my words hung in the air. There was nothing more to say. The truth had been spoken, and the pain was too deep to be erased. It is clear that the damage done is irreparable, and the path to forgiveness is a path I cannot imagine. At that moment, I realized that our love was destroyed forever, and the future we imagined together was now nothing more than a distant dream. The realization was painful, but it was one I had to accept if I was going to find a way to heal and move on, even if it meant doing it without her by my side. No, 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 that's not what I meant. You don't understand. I love you and don't want him. Bob, you need to give me a chance to explain everything. Do not lie to me. I heard what you said on that tape, and the thought of him in our bed is too much for me. I never would have thought that you would betray my love and cause me so much pain. If I'm wrong, look me in the eye and tell me it's not true. Look at me and tell me you weren't thinking about him when we made love. Yes, that's right. You can't even look at me. Damn it, you ruined everything, Laura. After I divorce you, you can live with him and then you won't have to dream about him anymore. Openly sobbing, she said barely audibly, "You can't divorce me. I love you. Please give me a chance to make things right. This is funny. Now do you want my forgiveness? Imagine my shock. I'll fix everything. I love you. I'm sorry. What makes you think that I won't be with you? After what you did, do I really look like someone who is ready to accept the betrayal of his cheating wife?" My voice shook with a mixture of emotions as I poured out my heart to Laura. I've been torn apart for the last 3 days. Part of me wanted to find a way to forgive you and mend the relationship. I thought I could get over this one-time mistake, but everything changed when I heard what you told your friends. The pain in my heart was palpable, and I couldn't hide it in my voice. The fact that she proudly shared intimate details of her thoughts during our lovemaking destroyed the last vestiges of trust I had in her. In all the years of our marriage, I had never cried openly, but now I could no longer contain my pain. I felt humiliated, Laura, I continued, tears flowing and my voice trembling. These women, your friends, now see me as an ignorant husband. It was as if I was living a lie, not noticing what was happening behind my back. Knowing that they were laughing at me and calling me ignorant destroyed any sense of self-worth I still had. And so it is no longer a part of my life. In addition to our marriage, you have managed to destroy our friendships. She was visibly moved when she saw my tears and realized that she had caused me incredible pain. I believe that deep down she did not want to hurt me at all, but my tears made her realize what her selfish act led to. She felt overwhelming regret and sadness, cried openly, and tried to hug me. I pushed her away and took a deep breath, trying to pull myself together. I know that in the past I could be an ignorant husband, but now everything has changed. I can't ignore what I know. I won't let anyone treat me like that again. When I spoke, there was pain in my voice from betrayal. I desperately wanted to save our marriage, to find a way to return to the love we once shared. But the reality of the situation became increasingly clear, and I did not see a clear path forward. You know, when we were returning from fishing, I was thinking about how to save our marriage, admitted I, and my voice broke. But to be honest, I couldn't find a way to do it. So I decided to let you make the decision yourself. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, and I don't want to live a life full of doubt and pain. When I finished speaking, there was a long pause, the silence heavy with the burden of our emotions. The future was uncertain, and I didn't know what lay ahead. But one thing is clear. I cannot live in a marriage filled with betrayal and doubt. What do you mean you'll let me decide? Well, since I couldn't decide what to do with us, I came up with a plan. I will tell you the story of the affair, and I will proceed further in accordance with your reaction. The beauty of my plan was that the fate of our marriage depended only on you. In the story I told 20 minutes ago, I never said that I was having an affair, only that I was having one. I repeated what you said about her being in bed with us. You know, how you dream about him while I give you all my love. Well, 20 minutes ago I told you that the affair was a one-time mistake, and there was only sex, not love. I asked you if there was any way we could get through this. He even offered to go for a consultation. Do you remember what you answered me? She told me to get out of our house. She said that you were going to destroy me in the divorce. She said you would take my business and turn me into a pool cleaner. You showed no mercy. So now you can expect exactly this from me. I won't kick you out like you did to me, but you will move into the guest room because I don't want you in my bed. I will meet with a lawyer and file for adultery. I can't wait to take advantage of that new divorce law you've been telling me about with all your rage. Bob, I didn't mean anything like that. You have to believe me. Do not do that. What about all our 20 years and children? There was emotion in my voice as I spoke against Laura, my heart breaking with every word. The pain of the betrayal was too great, and I couldn't help but feel how the weight of her act fell on our entire family. I know it will be difficult, I said, my voice trembling with resentment and anger. But I can't ignore what you did, Laura. You didn't think about children or our years together when you decided to betray me and our family. The feeling of her betrayal pierced me to the core, and the pain in my heart was all-consuming. The trust that once bound us was broken, and I couldn't figure out how to get through it. What you did is unforgivable, I continued in a firm voice, and you will have to face the consequences, just as you were ready to punish me for my mistakes. Now get your things out of my bedroom. My voice was filled with sadness as I led her away, physically separating her from the space we once shared. The room that was the sanctuary of our love is now tainted by betrayal. I couldn't sleep that night, mourning the death of my marriage. I loved her with all my heart, and the knowledge that in the most intimate moments of our lives, she dreamed of another man continued to hang over me like a dark cloud. I know that some men can forgive their wives for such transgressions, but I could not find the strength to do so. The pain was too great, and the trust that had been broken seemed irreparable. Despite my love for her, I could not get over her words. The dream of a future together is shattered forever, and the loss is immeasurable. All I could do was respect my feelings and emotions, even if it meant letting go of the woman I once loved so much. Before I left, I looked at the woman I had loved for the past 2 decades and said, "You have broken my heart. Today I lost someone who didn't care about me, but today you lost someone who was ready to do anything for you." The sounds of begging for forgiveness haunted me until I left Laura for the last time. Bob made a heartbreaking call to his children, dreading the moment when he would have to share this terrible news. His son Michael offered understanding and unwavering support, a glimmer of comfort amid the chaos. However, Katie's reaction dashed his hopes. The anger she showed, reflecting her close bond with her mother, pierced his heart. Bob tried his best to understand her, but the gap between them seemed insurmountable. Laura, in a rare display of strength, took the trouble to talk to Katie, admitting her grave mistake and urging her not to hold a grudge against her father, who had done nothing wrong. The children's lives were forever changed, but Bob was determined to secure their future, promising to fund their college education and care for them. The confrontation between the guys and their wives was filled with betrayal and heartache. Mary's heart broke when she learned of Laura's divorce, and she felt their long-term friendship crumble. Roger seethed with rage, unable to understand why his wife kept her affair a secret, and worse, why she seemed to encourage it. The revelation recorded on the tape was a heartbreaking blow for him, forcing him to doubt everything. The resentment was too deep to ignore, and it seemed as if the bond they had once shared was broken beyond repair. The days that followed were filled with heavy emotions and heartache as the consequences of their actions began to unravel before their eyes. The once close-knit group of friends now faces the harsh reality of betrayal and broken trust. Mary, devastated by the news of Laura's divorce, confronted Roger, her husband, and learned of her role in keeping the affair a secret. Her heart sank as she realized the gravity of her action. Roger was furious and demanded to know why she protected Laura and betrayed their best friend. From the weight of guilt and the awareness of her involvement, she was speechless and repentant. A similar scene unfolded at Scott's house when Emily heard hurtful words spoken about her husband on tape. The humiliation and shame were too much for Scott, and he made the painful decision to leave, leaving Emily in tears and remorse. Meanwhile, there was tension in Bob and Laura's house as Bob served Laura with divorce papers. Laura begged him to forgive her, realizing how great her mistake was and the pain she caused. But her pleas went unanswered. Bob's heart was too wounded to think about reconciliation. The hurt was deep, and he knew he could never trust her again. Our case was heard by Judge Montresor, and the divorce proceedings became a harrowing ordeal as Laura desperately tried to save her marriage. During the trial, Stan gave testimony filled with regret for the destruction he caused. Stan was told that he must either testify truthfully or suffer the wrath of his husbands. With regret and a heavy sense of guilt, his testimony sounded more like an admission of guilt and an apology to the injured parties. The courtroom filled with tears as the final blow to the marriage was dealt. Laura's heart sank even more as she relived the affair while playing the recording. The judge's decision was swift. Bob received a significant portion of their assets and denied spousal support under new rules set by the state. Laura painfully realized that her actions led to the destruction of her marriage. The excitement and passion she felt with Stan now seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by the regret and pain she had caused Bob. The once bright future they envisioned together has crumbled, leaving Laura with the weight and consequences of her betrayal. Faced with the grim reality of her situation, she realized that she had lost not only her marriage, but also the sense of security and the life she had once treasured. The consequences of their actions changed these friends' lives forever, leaving a trail of heartache, regret, and broken trust. The consequences of their choices will continue to shape their future while they struggle with the pain of their past mistakes and find a way to move on. Since Bob still loved her, he invited Laura to live in their guest room until she got her own place and decided on her future. The house is spacious enough for them to live in it without much stress. Bob worked harder and harder to keep his sanity and came home late enough to avoid seeing her. To her credit, Laura continued to try to win Bob back, but he had no intention of seeing her again. He began dating Becky, his secretary, who was not averse to making Bob happy. She knew that Bob was a good catch, and despite the fact that he was 10 years older than her, she was happy with him. Bob is a good person, and Becky couldn't believe Laura's stupidity and her luck. She would never give Bob a reason to worry or doubt his love. The emotional turmoil of the last 2 months weighed heavily on Laura's shoulders. Having Becky move in with Bob and take over the space that was once hers was a constant reminder of the life lost. It broke her heart to see the happiness and affection shared between her ex-husband and the woman who had taken her place. Every look, every touch, every moment of interaction between Bob and Becky was like a blow to the heart for Laura. Jealousy gnawed at her, and she could not help but feel deep regret for her actions that led to this situation. Her once happy home, filled with love between Bob and another woman, became a constant source of pain and sadness. The bed in which they once slept side by side now became a place of intimacy for Bob and Becky. The thought that they were together in this very place tore Laura's soul. It was a stark reminder that she had abandoned her husband out of selfishness and would now have to face the consequences of her actions. Feeling alone and afraid, Laura tried to find a way out of this emotional abyss. The future seemed uncertain and frightening. She had no job, no prospects. She is haunted by the fear of being left alone without the man she once loved so much, and the unknown of what lies ahead only aggravates her suffering. Having no other choice, Laura was forced to come to terms with her living conditions, realizing that she had lost the man she once treasured. Having come to terms with the real state of affairs, Laura realized that she needed to come to terms with her past mistakes and begin to rebuild her life. It was a painful journey, but she knew she needed to find the strength and inner resilience to move forward. Despite the difficulties ahead, Laura hoped that one day she could find peace and happiness again, even if it meant leaving the man she once thought would be with her forever. At Bob's office, when the other employees learned that Stan was the reason for Bob's divorce, they treated him like he had leprosy. Nobody talked to him, and he was treated like the asshole that he was. He realized that he could not stay there because they were making his life miserable, ruining his work, causing complaints and loss of money. Stan decided to open his own business and took several clients with him. Bob's lawyer explained that Stan was under a non-compete agreement and was in breach of their contract. Stan, being uneducated, did not even understand all this and continued to develop his business. Bob's lawyer advised him to be patient and wait a few months until they could present an appropriate case. Within 10 months, Stan had amassed over 100 clients, and his business was growing at an impressive rate. He felt on top of the world, enjoying the success he had worked so hard to achieve. However, the euphoria was short-lived when a lawyer filed a lawsuit against Stan, demanding $1 million from him. The lawsuit accused him of not only causing significant financial losses, but also of violating an ironclad non-compete agreement. While the legal battle continued, Bob, still licking the wounds inflicted by Stan, was eager for revenge. Money was the least of his worries. He wanted to make Stan pay for stealing his beloved wife, ruining his once happy marriage, and unceremoniously poaching his regular customers. When the dust finally settled, the result for Stan was disastrous. Bob prevailed, taking over Stan's once thriving business and leaving him with no choice but to file for personal bankruptcy. The dream career he had built with the opportunity to own part of Bob's company, a multi-million-dollar enterprise, collapsed before his eyes, leaving Stan destitute and emotionally damaged. With no formal education, Stan had no choice but to turn to grueling day labor to make ends meet. The dire consequences of his action could not help but affect him, and he learned a painful lesson that would haunt him forever. Never again to interfere in the affairs of another man's wife, and not to betray trust so callously. Scott and Roger's wives realized how close they had come to jeopardizing their marriages, just as Laura had done. This was a wake-up call for them, and they realized how important it was to forgive their husbands and how necessary it was to respect and cherish their relationship. They decided to work on rebuilding trust and communication to avoid similar mistakes in the future. Over time, they were able to strengthen their marriage and move forward together, rediscovering the love and forgiveness of their partners. They no longer interacted with Laura and Bob and missed the good times they once spent together. Laura's life took a dark turn as she dealt with the fallout from her failed marriage. With a heavy heart, she accepted that Bob would never take her back. Working as a receptionist at a dental office brought her some stability, but it didn't fill the void left by the loss of her once happy marriage. Living in a small apartment, she felt the weight of loneliness and regret every day. Trying to move on with her life, she met an older man from the office and started dating him, but the new relationship couldn't compare to the love she lost with Bob. The happiness she once felt was now just a distant memory, and she couldn't shake the pain of her past mistakes that followed her every step. In quiet moments, she thought about what could have been, wished she had made a different choice, and preserved the life she had with Bob. However, she had to come to terms with the fact that she had thrown away something special and irreplaceable. The future that had once seemed so bright was now just a shadow of its former self, and she felt a deep sense of sadness and longing for what had been lost. Bob missed Laura dearly, but that void was quickly filled by Becky, who made it her mission to be the perfect soulmate. Bob loved the young woman's energy and lust, and they married a year later. And a year later, Michael and Katie had a half-brother. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.